no one gives you an award. Your business doesn't make more money when you pick your outfits for 3 hours, right? So that's
Yeah.
exactly the perfect use case is you look for the things that doesn't move anything forward, is just a time suck, and you just care about the outcome of that thing being done. If you look at automation in your business in that lens, which is what is the lowest level thing that I can do that has some level of leverage, that if I took it out of my workflow, I'd buy back half an hour or 2 hours.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Denisa Tova, and today's guest is part innovator, part educator, and a really good one. And I'd say 100% mad scientist in the best possible way. Mark Kashef is the founder and CEO of Prompt Advisors, with well over a decade of experience in data science, automation, prompt engineering. And he's not just building smart tools, he's actually teaching others how to use them. He has a very, very, very practical approach. But today is not just about algorithms. We want to find out about his journey, his mindset. I really wish I could just crawl into his mindset sometimes, and the risks he took to carve out his own path, and also the human side behind the machine learning. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Denise. It's a pleasure to be here and appreciate the very kind setting expectations intro that I don't deserve. So thank you.
Oh no, it is well deserved. There's just there's so much information, so much to consume, and it's really tough to make sense of it. And so I've always admired your delivery and the ability to take the complicated and sort of simplify it. But stepping outside of that world, just tell me your story. What got you to where you are today?
Sure, I could go for a whole podcast worth on this one question, but I'll keep it as succinct as I can. As a kid, I was actually not into tech very much. I wasn't into math. I was very much an artist. I was into something called dot painting. So I used to compete in art competitions, and the creative side was the part that I really tapped into. My parents were both exceptionally good at math and physics, so that always intimidated me because that wasn't like my natural calling because I had no use for it, comma, at the time, which is really important to underline because at the time, over the years, I kind of like had to do what I had to do to gain their approval on the math side and the science, but it still wasn't calling out to me. And then in my bachelor's degree, I did finance. I was obsessed for a while, working on Bay Street, very similar to Wall Street in Canada, on the investment banking side. And then I remember studying my third year corporate finance final exam the day before. I was looking at these questions and I'm like, there's no way in 10 years that someone is going to sit down and do this with no AI help or something automating it for them. And then instead of studying, I kind of like got mad and then I ordered 3 or 4 AI books at the time, which were hard to get your hands on. There weren't many. I picked up one. It was called Thinking Machines. I still have it to this day. There's like 18 million bookmarks and sticky tags in there because I was obsessed. And then I read about this very talented woman named Rena El Kalyubi, who started using AI at the time to help detect emotions and teach autistic kids to learn emotions through AI and facial detection and emotion detection. And I'm like, man, this is way more interesting than corporate finance.
Yeah.
So after I finished my degree, I wanted to tap into, at the time, the sexiest job alive was a data scientist. That was actually voted the number one sexiest role alive. And that's all I wanted to be. Uh, because that kind of combined the art and the creativity, which I really love, and the math and marrying them both together, as well as the machine learning. So when I got into that, I got into analytics and people analytics for 5 years. So I started building like trends to predict who's going to leave a company. How do you predict morale? And who are the specific departments or sections where you might want to look for churn or turnover based on these factors? So I started putting like the creative side and the art side plus the machine learning, and that became my obsession. And then year 4 into that job, I wanted to go pro and really get into AI. So I did a master's at Queen's University here in Canada, which was a 1 year, super intensive master of management of AI. So it was a combination half the year, super intense math and coding, and then half the year applying that to project management, business management, and AI transformation. So we did like natural language processing where I learned about these language models and I played with really awful versions of like GPT-2 and things like that. And that was my gateway drug so that 3, 4 years down the line, after I work at Amazon and a few companies as a data scientist, the moment came out in 2023, and I'm like, that's it. That's my in. I know this world before anyone else, and that's why I called the company Prompt Advisors. Because at the beginning, no one had any idea how to write a prompt, and I'm like, I will advise you on how to do that. And then eventually, we started adding on all these services.
There's so much there. Oh my God. I don't even, I do have to ask. So it was before the exam, you had, it entered your mind thinking there has to be a better way. And you said you
Yeah.
grabbed AI book. How did you even know what to grab? Why AI at that time? What led you to grab AI book?
Yeah, so all I did is I went on Amazon.ca. I'm in Canada. I wrote automation AI. I filtered by the top 5 books. I picked the first one that the cover looked pretty to me. I ordered that, and then that was my way in.
That's brilliant. So this is really this is how you merge the artistic, the visual side. You said you grabbed the book that looked pretty, so the aesthetics, and you try to figure out a way to automate something that didn't come naturally to you that could help you basically ace the exam.
Exactly.
That's yeah, that's fascinating. I like to get into the mind of somebody who's who's a mad scientist. This is so fascinating. So fast forward, you mentioned the word prompt, and being that many of our viewers and listeners, some of them they're at different levels of using AI, in their day to day. What how would you explain what prompt is and why is it so important?
Yeah, so a prompt is like giving an instruction to an employee. Where we are today is that we have different tiers of employees, which are proxies for different models you can prompt. Some prompts, you can give a very vague instruction and they can extrapolate the natural 5 to 7 steps needed. And some models, you need to spoon feed, give examples, punish when they do things that are not what you're expecting. So it's literally like having employees and speaking or giving instructions to employees. The more detailed your instruction, the more context you give in that instruction, and the more examples you give in that instruction, the higher the likelihood that they can predict what you want as the outcome. Exact same analogy.
So I think prompting could be intimidating to some because it could sound complicated. You have different, some of these prompts, some of these instructions they're like novels, right? It's like a thesis. So what about instead just giving it a context in your own words, sort of describing the situation, here are the details, here's a background. I want you to X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. So with prompting, depending on the model, so I'll be more like tactical without overwhelming the audience. Let's say you go into ChatGPT, you have some models that have the word GPT before it, and you have some models that say the word O. If it's a model that has the word O, that means it's a smarter model. It's called a reasoning model, meaning it thinks similar to how we would think about something. With those reasoning models, giving a thesis as a prompt is not needed because they're good enough that if you give it a very brief line of context, a brief line of like what we're striving for, and maybe some form of context dump of what the goal is or what the outcome looks like, they're good enough to do a decent job the first time, and then you can go back and forth until you get it right. Those are the smarter models. With the ones that have like GPT 4.1, GPT 4.0, all these other words I'm going to say, sometimes you might need a thesis prompt because it needs to generalize on enough examples to have a higher likelihood of estimating what is it that Denisa wants when I spit out these words.
Okay, that makes sense. So tell me personally, in your personal life, how do you use AI? What are some examples? You wake up, it doesn't brush your teeth, I
No,
assume.
not yet, not yet. But yeah, in general, I think the biggest thing for me is I have a time management opportunity I always need to fix. So when it comes to I do YouTube, I have run the agency, I have a community, so time is like non-existent. So I used to use it to create my calendar, create my schedule, help me create my content calendar, help me come up with ideas with my content calendar, and I hook it up to my YouTube to go through all the analytics to see what did well, what resonated, what didn't resonate, where am I getting the best comments, where am I getting the worst comments, and then basically have a thought partner. That's like the best use case in my life. I use it also obviously for email drafting, especially more transactional emails, not the ones where I want to be thoughtful. So I would say it just helps me use my human brain for the things that a human brain is really needed for, which is thoughtful responses, thoughtful WhatsApp messages to Denisa, a thoughtful post in community, and then offloading the things that just don't aren't a very high leverage point for me.
I like that. I think about my day too. And this sounds, I don't know that you're that extreme, but when I go to bed, it's generally about 11 o'clock. I cannot wait to wake up. And that's around 3:30 AM, 3:45 AM. And but I've always been like that. I've always been like that, and I'm like a hummingbird. I wake up and I go into what I call a lab, and then, of course, I turn on the YouTube, and there's Mark, and he's talking about a particular advance or new product, in the world of AI, and the use cases, and that's but you could really go nuts. It could be really super overwhelming. So
Mm.
kind of taking it back, if somebody is thinking about, okay, this sounds great. I understand in theory, okay, I've downloaded Chat GPT on my iPhone or phone, mobile phone, and I can ask it, for simple, I can give it a simple tasks. But then let's say what Mark is talking about, the simple automation to more advanced, how is it relevant to me as a business owner? And, why should somebody listen to your channel? Who is that for?
Sure, yeah, sounds good. So I'll answer the first question. In terms of like navigating the AI space, especially if you're newer, you don't want to look at it as a whole because you're inevitably going to get overwhelmed and confused. And there's things being released every single day. And it's hard to know if you don't have the experience with all these little builds and tools, what's worth your time and what's noise. It's really hard to make that assessment in this environment. So for me, I recommend pain point first. And that's really why I try to tailor my content around, especially when I give use cases, because I might show this really cool tech, but for you, other than like it looking cool, it might not be tactical. So I try to think, okay, if you were a lawyer, how would this help you? If you were a finance professional, how could this help you? So if you go pain point first and search for AI things related to solving the pain point versus AI things, comma, in general, you're already ahead of the game because you're always now obsessing about the ecosystem, about solving your core problems, things that go from you learning something to some form of value-based ROI versus just knowing something for the sake of knowing it and saying, hey guys, did you see this? This is crazy. That's awesome, but that doesn't do anything to move your business forward or make more cash flow or make you any less overwhelmed. You're running a business, it's overwhelming as it is. You should only look at things with the small and scarce time that you have that advance you, that evolve you, and most importantly, especially in the law domain, put you ahead of the pack, put you ahead of the 80% that still looks at ChatGPT as a chatbot, not as something that in a very short amount of time will be taking over all kinds of industries.
That makes sense because it could be overwhelming. And there's a need, almost it creates like this false sense of, well, I better catch up and stay up to speed so that I don't get left behind. And so I think there is just consuming the right information. And I've learned and I've heard a great advice that, you consume information that you know that you can apply and use pretty much right away or at
Mm.
some point in the future.
Yeah.
So I think that's really amazing. Tell me about, your agency. Tell me about your company. What's the in a simple terms, what is your this is really exciting. What is your vision and how would you describe the culture?
Yeah. So for a while, it was just me, myself, and I running this, and I was just a freelancer on Fiverr. I was the third gig on Fiverr doing prompts for people, and that was pretty much my quote unquote business for like 5, 6 months, and then things took off. Fiverr PR picked me up on the platform, and then all of a sudden we started ranking up, and then I met my co-founder eventually, who entered the business, and I started evolving from just building prompts to building small applications, to building custom GPTs, to then doing workshops for people, to then building full-scale web apps. And now, 2.5 years later, we're working just with enterprise companies, which is a very grateful place to be, where they're asking huge questions, like multi-million dollar questions. How do we not just implement AI? How do we integrate it where it makes sense? Help us design architecture, help us create the next couple months to year roadmap that we should adhere to. And for some clients, or we only have like now 3 clients, the whale clients. For one client, it's like, help us build this thing that's going to fully disrupt this industry. And it's going to take us 8 months, but we need to future proof it as much as we can, knowing and expecting that things will drop along the way that might catch our eye, but you have to keep us focused to help us capture this market. So it's very exciting. It's also very stressful because I'm always trying to engineer with the best I can with what I see in front of me. But what I see in front of me changes week by week. So I have to be very disciplined in knowing when it's worth changing scope versus not. So culture wise, we're always on our toes. We have a healthy level of like optimistic and happy stress because we have to. You can't be in this business if you're not ready to be nimble, especially if there's like cost savings for a client. So if a tech stack I was going to use today is going to be, I don't know, 10 grand a month for you to operate, but something comes out, it would save you 9 grand. That is a reason why I have to shift priorities, pause the project delivery because it's better for you. So that's the hardest part of this industry and running this agency is you have to be hyper nimble to be not just good, but to give your clients what they deserve, which is the best experience possible.
That sounds like a unbelievably almost an impossible task because literally daily there are updates and not just minor updates. We're talking about going from where you had to input an actual code instructions to essentially no code automation or close to it. It just changes week to week. Um, Security. Let's talk about security. That's obviously one of the top priorities in just about any industry, and especially in the legal industry. What tips would you have someone who, let's say, okay, I just sign up, for ChatGPT Pro, and now I'm a subscriber, and I want to start pumping in statements or contracts. It sits on my, on my, I have it, on a cloud, so to speak. What are some of your tips to
Yeah,
do
this
it
is great.
wisely?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. It's very timely that you ask this because Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, just announced that everything you put into ChatGPT, including when you go into temporary mode, where even I thought that was like a discarded memory of
Yeah.
your chats, all of that is subject to court, which is very important for your audience and yourself because anything you put in there and you go back and forth, one of your chats could be subject to discovery. So chat is for ideating, is for drafting things without people's names and without their actual case file numbers and all the specifics. It's for ideating about strategy. But although however tempting it is, you should not be dumping a whole Google Drive into your chat and saying, write me this file review or do a contract analysis or review it for this and this jurisdiction or this precedent. Very tempting. Now, what is the solution to this? We are in a place, and in the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to be in an amazing place where we have open source models that you can live on your computer that aren't that large. And we won't get into technicalities, but you have some that are like we call mega models. That's like OpenAI is like 500 billion parameters. And then you have ones that can live on your computer, which are 8 billion parameters or 50 billion parameters. Those could probably fit around 10, 15 gigs. You can technically now have this little browser on your computer. It's not rocket science to set up, where you can dump whatever you want. Yes, it won't be the bleeding edge of the bleeding edge, but it will be good enough to help you without you stressing about, is OpenAI going to read this? No, they're not going to read that. What's the probability that I would get in trouble for this? You don't want to gamble with things like this, especially with a lot of people taking this for granted. This is the last thing you want to gamble with, especially the security of the files you use, the people and their affairs in those files, irrespective of what domain of law you're in. So on-prem solutions using local, that is the name of the game. And anytime we've done an engagement in the law domain, it's always been an on-prem installation or implementation of some source model that right now, again, is kind of mediocre compared to the latest and greatest. But in the short future, we're going to have things like GPT 4.1 or a version of O3 that's open source. It's just a matter of time. So you have to just compromise a bit on the cutting edge, but at the same time, you can still take advantage of the AI opportunity.
And I think that is so important if you have, employees who are starting to discover the, the thrill of it, that they don't randomly start, dumping documents in and putting stuff out there. I think that's really important to stress out. Um, what is as you're assembling your team and obviously looking for competence, without a doubt, what else is important to you about people who you work with, that's not quantitative, human qualities. What are you looking for?
I think there's two actually that are the difference makers for me. They're deal breakers. So one is addicted to learning and understanding that you have to keep learning forever. Sometimes you'll meet a developer where they have this stack or this model that they're super comfy with. They like the way they prompt it, they like the experience, they like the specific area. But sometimes when something is so compelling that it is worth switching on every parameter, I need someone that doesn't have an ego around the tech or basically to say in one sentence, I have no loyalty to tools. I have loyalty to outcomes. And I want the people on my team to have the same thing. I don't care if it's OpenAI today, Claude tomorrow. We will use the thing that is the best, most secure, and the most powerful and the most cost effective. I don't care what the name of it is. So some people pigeonhole certain tools and methods and frameworks, and they're addicted to it as if it's like some form of religious ideology. And for me, that's not going to work because the names of these tools are going to keep changing. There's going to be a brand new thing that's worth looking at as time goes on. So someone that's nimble, but also has the discipline and wherewithal to know when to push back and say, no, this is not worth my time. This is not worth us making the switch. And here's why. So that kind of critical thinking and assessment. That's first and foremost. And number two is just honestly just coachable because this is hard. Delivery of AI solutions is hard because things change. And with generative AI, it's very different from delivering a website, where when you're done a website, as soon as Denisa says, I like it, we're good outside of me handing it off. But with Gen AI, you could say, I love this today. And as a client, you could come back to me next week saying, you know what? I tried it at like 10 a.m. on Sunday and it said something I didn't like. Can we just fix that? And then that one word, fix that, could mean that I accidentally break the rest of the system because all of this stuff isn't magic, it's predictive. So you make one change in like a big prompt or even a middle-sized prompt, there will be effects that you can't forecast until you go and run everything again. So it's kind of sometimes a death by a thousand cuts to get the thing right, and you have to be able to deal with that.
That really resonates. That resonates so much because and it's taken me a while, sometimes trial and error, and I'm what you would call sort of a fast growing startup. I mean, I've been in the industry for 2 decades, but just really kind of narrowed it down to a particular niche, and I started bringing people on board, and I have learned a lot about myself in the process and who I really work well with, and that is somebody who's open to learning, no ego. Now, or may not have possessed these qualities, so then you sort of put them in a particular box and say, well, you are great at doing X.
Mhm.
um I may not be brainstorming with you about the future of the company, but you're so great at performing this and understand the culture, and so you're okay. But in the process, I've learned so much about who I am. What have you learned about yourself?
Yeah, I think especially if you start adding more people on payroll and you make it with this assumption that you'll be able to service it with more revenue, right? You start to get
Yeah.
stressed. Like, am I getting the full value that maybe could have just stayed myself and saved on the overhead? I learn about, for me, the hard reality is I haven't been very great at delegating in my past. It's a skill that I've had to learn. I've also had to break down some of this madness and this mad scientist stuff into actionable micro actions that I can teach someone else. So it's one thing to be in my head and do the thing silently at like 6 a.m. versus break down how I thought about how I got this outcome so that someone else can help me take care of it. So I just realized how in my head I've been, and I have all these, like, I have a stack of tacit knowledge that I've had to make democratized, and just learning through this process that one, I have to know what is worth my time, what needs my time. My time is best spent. The highest leverage activity for me, honestly, for the agency, for my community, and for my brand is content. So if I have to make a choice between some admin task and content, content should always win. So also being very intentional about what is the highest leverage opportunity for myself and my business and my co-founder and my team overall. So that's really the biggest thing I've learned.
You've built quite a big community, and it keeps growing, and already added so much value. I'm a proud member, and I've learned so much. It
Me
can
too.
be overwhelming sometimes, so I can hear your words. Just really understanding kind of, I think we talked about, like, for my practice, what would be sort of the lower, not low value, but repeatable task, and start there and then kind of build it, from that place, really understanding the pain points first. Um, what led you to start the community? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it wasn't actually, let's say, revenue motivated because I knew for a while I could make way more money just taking on projects myself as well as a team than just running it. Because running a community is unbelievably high maintenance, especially if you want to do it well. You can run one where you try to do it on autopilot and it will show up in the quality. But for me, I was basically thinking, okay, so YouTube and social media very soon is going to have a flurry of like AI slop. With AI slop, you're going to have a lot of extra confusion on top of the existing ones. How do I learn this stuff? What is the best place? What is practical? What is not practical? What is hype and what is not hype? So for me, I was thinking about this last November, and then I was thinking, you know what? I am an early adopter of this stuff. So I want to make a community where everyone that wants to also be an early adopter of this stuff can be a member. And my goal and my promise is I'm going to deliver every single day something new that you haven't seen, but I frame it in a way that you can use it if it fits in your workflow. So it's not saying, hey, look at this shiny thing. It's I tested this and it's not worth your time. Or I tested this and I figured out how to get around this limitation by doing XYZ. So if I do that every day or almost every day, then I can stack all of these different micro tutorials to help you like really one step at a time become a lot more proficient. And more importantly, what we're trying to do is to meet as many people where they're at with the library of content that we're accumulating over time. So if you say, I have no idea how to do this thing called make.com or Zapier or N8N, I just point you to where you can kind of self-serve. But we still have the coaches where, again, I always wanted a place when I was learning where I wish someone could just like unstuck me from this one area for like 3, 4 hours. I'm in the spinning and yelling at the screen. If I could remove those barriers and I can make an ecosystem where it's like a warm, fuzzy place to want to be a mad scientist, to explore, to tinker, but to tinker intentionally, not tinker for the sake of tinkering, but tinkering for the sake of actual ROI. That's kind of like what I've been trying to build, primarily for business owners and entrepreneurs.
And you have been tremendously successful in delivering that. And I'm saying it as, I'm not promoting it just to promoting it. I really truly mean it, because there's a lot of noise, and I just consume knowledge. So I do love to learn. But there's a lot of hype, like you said, and their communities, they go through high volume of membership, and then it becomes this, okay, now you're here and it's more overwhelming.
Yep.
But you've succeeded in saying, hey, here's this, I've tested it, watch my quick Loom video,
Mhm.
and then decide for yourself if that applies to your business. And then also giving people opportunity to post, be part of the discussion, and learn what has worked, what has not. So I really applaud you for building that.
Thank you so much. We have big plans with it. Very, very big plans. Right now, it's like we have the critical mass to make some big investments, and we're going to make it a place where we can put our money where our mouth is. But yeah, I won't reveal too much right now. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm curious now. That's fantastic. And speaking of building, how about I give Mike over to you now?
Okay,
And would you care to give us a little demo of
sure.
an automation?
Absolutely, would love to. So I'm going to pull this up here. It just takes a couple seconds. And basically what I'm going to show you is an example of what an AI agent could look like. Because the word AI agent is thrown around left, right, and center. Some people use the word AI agent for a literal chatbot. Some use AI agent to actually talk about something that is truly autonomous. So the word agent is a spectrum. And it's really important to know that it's not binary. It's not that something is an agent or is not an agent. It is how agentic is it. It's basically this end-to-end spectrum. So what I'm showing you on screen here is a very popular platform for building agents without having to code called N8N. There's similar competitors called Zapier, Make.com. Each one has its own nuances in terms of how it works. But the beauty of these platforms, especially N8N, is I'm going to use a little pointy thing right here. This and this are examples of agents where if you double click them right here and you pop out this is a prompt. So for me, I am instructing the agent, in this case, analyze the parsed email for lead qualification, use the email parser agent to extract structured information, and go through the following. So imagine you have a law firm, you're getting inquiries all the time through your Outlook, and you don't have time, and maybe your virtual assistant would be better served or your EA would be better served elsewhere. This could probably go through your emails, scan them, maybe tag them in some way to help flag high level opportunities that are important for you or are worthy of your attention. So this is just one very small microcosm of how this could work, where if we go left to right, you have something called a trigger. A trigger is just like, what is the thing that makes an automation automate whatever it's trying to automate? So the trigger here is you get an email. So this could run quite a few times per hour, especially if you receive a lot of emails. Next, it goes to the agent. And what happens with the agent is it has to decide, okay, so I have three tools here. If I see an email and it's worth me looking into, I might want to break down the email even more into piece parts to see, okay, is this something that fits within Denisa's ICP, her target market, the type of client she's looking for? If so, then you know what? I'm going to send a Slack notification to Denisa's channel called High Value Clients, and then it will give a profile or a summary of this client that came in, what they're looking for, and maybe eventually you can keep adding on to this automation to have it, if it is deemed as a high value, because you've built that trust with the automation, that it auto sends your private Calendly link or any form of meeting link to book a discovery call. And this is an example also of how you think through automation. You want to start with person plus automation, and you want to surveil it and see what comes out of it. Because when you start, even if you're decent at prompting, things will happen. Edge cases will come in. Someone will come in suing you, and it might say this is a high value client because it sees the suing amount is like over millions of dollars. And then that's an edge case you probably could not anticipate from the beginning. So with automations, you test, and eventually, once you build trust and you know what the error rate is and like what the consequences of the error is, which is very important, if it's a very high consequence, you might never want the human out of the loop. But if it's like within range, it's like 3 to 5%, and when it does make a mistake, you've noticed it's not fatal, then it might be worth going end to end and seeing you
Mm.
run that for a month or two. And if it keeps going, then you now have a winner automation. Time to look for the other opportunity in your business or look for a way to expand this automation. So right now, this might do lead qualification, but you also might eventually want to do lead nurture, where maybe you have a Zoom with a Fireflies or a note taker. And then after the Zoom or the Fireflies, you analyze the transcript with AI. And then if they're not a fit, you put them automatically through this automation on a nurture sequence where you keep them in your ecosystem. And this is the mentality of genuine automation and using agents where they make the most sense is marrying the business case with the value case with the client experience you're trying to give. Because most of us, including myself, we're always late to doing the extra detail things that really drive and add a alpha to your business, like nurturing, like adding some form of email content, giving value, even to clients that you might not want to work with, comma, now, because maybe they're not your ICP now, but maybe in 7 months they will. So these kinds of mindsets and automations help frame everything in a way that you can better position yourself for the future.
This is really fascinating. So to differentiate, if you have, let's say you take a ChatGPT and you give it a simple instruction, help me come up with, write a blog on a particular topic. I mean, and it writes a blog basically, and it can obviously, you can be more sophisticated and really give it a lot of detail. It's capable of doing that. But when you start adding more tasks to it, like for an example, podcasts, right? I record a podcast. If I want to now read the podcast, maybe somebody that I interviewed last year, and look for particulars, and then come up with gifts for all the guests who mentioned during their interview or during their chat that they have some sort of a common interest. So
Yeah.
now we're adding basically all these different tasks. So the way I look at agent is now Chat GPT or any other LM model is not capable then, or not capable. You can set up automation where you connect tasks, but it's almost like agent has the ability to go out there and pick the right tool to complete the task. Is that the right understanding of the difference between the two?
Hmm. Yeah, so ChatGPT right now is coming to a point where you have things called connectors. And then connectors are kind of like a proxy for the tools I showed you on screen. But even then, right now, it's not mastered the ability to know when to use which tool when. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes with more edge cases or more complicated edge cases, it doesn't necessarily know which one to use. And when it does know what to use, it sometimes doesn't know what to ask of that tool. So with this kind of automation tool or all the suites of automation tools, you have more pinpoint accuracy and precision to basically make it next to impossible for the agent to use the wrong tool at the wrong time. And if it uses the right tool, you have the right instructions in that tool to make sure that if it's used properly. So it's a matter of kind of being more surgical with your approach of automation versus in ChatGPT, outside of very cookie cutter and then templated use cases. As soon as you really push the boundaries, you will see what's called hallucination, which is a fancy word for BS, BSing its way through the query and like executing the wrong thing at the wrong time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's look, all of this stuff makes sense to us, and I know this sounds probably intimidating and it's sort of foreign, and I think the big thing, as you mentioned, is really understanding, being open-minded. I mean, if you're interested in it, keep on soaking it up, but understanding how you want to use it, what do you want to get out of it? Is it personally? Is it for business? Like a great example is, I hate shopping. I hate packing. I really do. I'm the type of person, I want to get into my closet. I want to, have a sort of a pre-set, attire, and this is what I'll grab for this, and this is what I'll grab for this occasion. And so we recently went to Italy for a week,
Nice.
and I didn't want to, it was beautiful, but I didn't want to think about packing and what to wear, what not to wear. And so I created sort of a stylist in Chat GPT, and I started feeding it a screenshots of what I had, purged some of it, and it laid out a tire, like for every single day, kind of, it even anticipated the temperature, and it gave me options. It even gave me tips on how to pack it. Literally move this into that corner of the suitcase, that corner of the
That's
suitcase,
amazing.
so you're not overweight. And it was phenomenal. And I got in there and was able to really focus. I know it may sound silly, but I was able to focus on the trip, and this did not feel like a chore. So you can have something like that to then, like I mentioned, I've done what, maybe close to 100 podcast episodes, and I got this idea, let's basically pull a certain information out of all the videos, and then maybe even like connect guests, based on some common theme and it was a series of about 5 different steps, and then using some of these tools. But after a while, I was burned out. And so, of course, came to you and said, all right, I'm stuck. Yeah. So it's endless.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And that use case was awesome in terms of trying to buy back your time that was just not very valuable. Like no one gives you an award. Your business doesn't make more money when you pick your outfits for 3 hours, right? So that's
Yeah.
exactly the perfect use case is you look for the things that doesn't move anything forward, is just a time suck. And you just care about the outcome of that thing being done, which in your case is wearing the outfit to your Italian dinner, not where trying to figure out where you located it or how to pack it, right? So if you look at automation in your business in that lens, which is what is the lowest level thing that I can do that has some level of leverage, that if I took it out of my workflow, I'd buy back half an hour or an hour or 2 hours.
It's been, and people might be wondering, so okay, this is cute about the outfits, but let me tell you, I do a lot of education, lawyers, judges, and even the PowerPoint. I have a tendency to overpack, probably you as well as me. We want to share a lot of stuff, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so being able to run it through this process and say, okay, here's what I'm trying to say. Here's who the end user is, right? Here's who will be receiving this information. Don't make it about me, the presenter, but what are some of the pain points? How do people like to learn? How, to me, if somebody that term makes sense, the technical term, but to person listening to me, they will tune it out. So it's been instrumental where my team can do the work and the content and the education, the connection, the marketing. It's been incredible. Buying back time, as a founder, and to make sure that you constantly improve
Yeah.
your process.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I pay for the full plan of ChatGPT Pro is I use and abuse the voice mode. So for me, when it comes to content creation or having a difficult conversation with a subcontractor or a member of my team, I'll on my drive home, literally on my drive home to this podcast, I for 30 minutes, I was going back and forth on our next like Q4 objectives and what we should do. What's too aggressive? What's aggressive enough? What is an area where if I wanted to accomplish X task by December 31st, I might need headcount. And although typing this is totally doable, just having this conversation allows for one, me to speak authentically, but also say the subtle things that I might not type. So it takes that into account. And then I basically have this mentor, this mini mentor that I'm constantly having a conversation with. And if you enable memory and you're okay with certain things being stored in memory, it remembers things. So it remembers that last week I had this conundrum, or we added this person onto my team, or I added a executive assistant to my team, so she might be able to take the load for this thing for this next initiative. So it's not just the typing, it's not just the taking pictures of things, it's doing everything because what you can do is I have that conversation. And when I come home, I now have a full transcript of my call with AI. I can take that, dump it in a new chat, add some images of charts or whatever, and then just keep on going. So it's also the vertical leverage you can get within going very deep in a task, which in this case, in my case, was ideation.
So you essentially totally can relate. It's like a second brain. And where else I'm thinking about, law firms, what's happening right now in I think just overall accounting firms, professional services firms, there's a lot of acquisition, a lot of sort of a consolidation going on, and you have to remain competitive. And one of the ways to remain competitive is to really document your processes, your standard operating responses, your playbook, so to speak. And who really has time to have to create and document, let alone document processes in your, for your financial department, your operations, your client acquisition, client services. And this is brilliant because you're right. You can be on a drive to work, to office, virtual office, and you dictate. You can also document everything that you do throughout the day, and then it can organize it for you, and that can be a foundation for the playbook. And that's what would also make you more attractive prospect if you're looking to, get acquired, to scale. I mean, there are just endless opportunities.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good segue to another idea I had, which is especially if you're pursuing some form of liquidity event,
Yeah.
one of my biggest hacks is record a loom of every individual task that you do. So you don't have to talk really, just screen record and just do the thing on the screen until it's done, and then stop the recording, and then like label it as something, and do the next thing that you do, record the whole session. Don't no bells and whistles, just record. Then download all of those videos, upload them to something called AI Studio.Google, because Google has a model that understands video. And you can say, watch this video, build an SOP for exactly how I did this process end to end. And now you can start to really hyper document things that you might not even have the words to articulate that you do or think about, or things that you click through that in passing, if you're writing step-by-step instructions, you would miss. So this is where you really, as you get into productive AI and productivity hacks, you can 5x yourself really quickly. And that's what I did recently, because when I hired an executive assistant, finally, she was asking me, cool, do you have a playbook? And I'm like, oh no, I don't. I don't. So I guess for the next week, which what I did 2 weeks ago, every day I record myself for 3, 4 hours worth of content, uploaded it, made an SOP, did it again, uploaded it, made an SOP. By the end of it, I had this compendium of exactly everything I do, how I do it, and a guess from the AI as to why I do it.
So what would something like that look like when you say, does it actually follow as you clicking through, you're opening a file? It's not like you have a camera basically, filming you as you're doing something, or perhaps you do. It actually follows you on the screen as you're opening
On the screen.
stuff.
Yeah, it sees
Yeah,
what
yeah.
I'm typing, who I'm typing it to, how did I write that thing. So,
Mhm.
because if you think about a big picture, a video is a series of images stitched
Yeah.
together. So all it does is looks frame by frame and it analyzes them all in a bundle. So if you ask a question like, also extract the way that I write my emails, and it was in that recording, you now have that as an artifact.
It's there. Yeah, so that's the brain. You're right, because I lack patience to, to write something. To write something and to explain something. That's why I'm voice noting now and record, it's just I don't type. But it's also like putting the raw information. So bottom line is, what we're saying here is, do not over consume, just for the sake of consuming, or
Mm.
thinking that, that's the only way to know how to use it. Be intentional. And then the other thing is, don't use the excuse, I don't have time, because it's actually here to give you time. So if you are truly intentional, you can turn things around and use it in a really constructive way, as opposed to looking at it as, this is an enemy that is going to steal our jobs. And how do you think about that?
I have to think, because it's easy to go into fear mongering mode. The most popular content in the headlines is fear mongering.
Yeah.
I would say I work enough with this technology to know that it has a lot of flaws. It still makes a lot of mistakes. And one thing we notice is more so not a full sidebar, but it definitely is important to know. The smarter these models get, the more arrogant they also get, meaning they think they are right because they have quote unquote thought about it for 2 minutes. But sometimes they are glaringly wrong. They will still make up things. Like you could do a full deep web search, and then it will go and reference a page that doesn't exist with a stat that doesn't exist, but it will word it in a way where the average person won't want to question it.
Mhm.
So it's more valuable than ever for you to worry about just using it to its fullest potential with you first. Don't worry about this automate everything. We'll see how this plays out. There's just so many flaws, and it's also very not just cost intensive for these companies. Like all of these big AI companies are bleeding money to make this work. So imagine running super intelligence at scale right now across North America and the world. I don't even know if that is economically viable to do. So let's not worry about the things that people are extrapolating, especially a lot of startups that seem to be interesting, because if it's in their incentive to tell you this is coming and they're the ones apparently bringing this artificial general intelligence, then there's going to be some hyperbole at play. So for me, I don't care about what is going to be theoretically. I care about where I can see the next 3, 5 steps going forward. I don't see this as, I see this as disruptive. I would be lying if I said it's not disruptive, but it's not going to be disruptive to people that are masters of their craft. If you are
Mhm.
an amazing attorney and you just are amazing and you add an amazing skill set to complement it, you will just be a superhuman attorney. That's pretty much it. If you are a mediocre attorney and you choose to not use it, then it's a matter of time until people are going to be ahead of you because they chose to be one, a master of the craft, and a master of marrying what relates to their craft in AI and blending it with their day to day.
Well said. Well said, Mark. Any other parting thoughts?
I'd say overall, I know probably you and I get super excited and nerd out on things. And people might be intimidated and they might kind of like just click away from this episode and be like, yeah, AI is cool. Bye. But the one thing I would say, and I know this because I have proof. I have almost like 600 folks in my community. A lot of them are non-technical. You can learn this stuff. You're not going to learn it in a day or in a week, but generative AI is not like the AI that I come from, which is very math heavy and very coding heavy. The barrier to using it is zero right now. And the barrier to leveraging it for something that is ROI positive could be something very menial, but you can still use it. There's so much content. There's so many YouTube videos. There's so many free resources that it's just a matter of you making that intentional decision to want to upskill yourself. And I highly recommend that you do that now while things are still in the semi-early adopter stage before it becomes a mandatory thing that you have to learn. It's always better when you're on the front foot versus on the back foot. So, irrespective, if you're an amazing attorney, but you're not as competent on the AI side, within 90 days of just doing something for 20 to 40 minutes a day, just trying and failing, you will be way ahead in 90 days if you just put your head down and just put your foot on the pedal.
Great advice and very practical advice too. You have a choice, you absolutely do. And so giving you the tools and that the rest is up to you. Mark, thank you so much, not just for sharing your expertise and sort of, giving us the behind the scenes look and inside of your brain. And this has been really, really enlightening. Thank you.
It's been my absolute pleasure. And I'm going to say this for the transcript. I like luxury coffee and luxury chocolate in case you do the whole gift thing with automation. So, yeah,
Love it. See, there you go. Now I have to deliver. Oh, I love both of those too.
there you go.
Uh, yeah. So to everybody listening, don't forget to check out the links below. Mark's early AI adopters community, his 30/30 YouTube series. Gosh, we didn't even talk about it. We have to bring you back. And of course, if you're curious about AI, don't know where to begin, this is definitely a place to start. And as always, subscribe, share, follow us on social media for some real conversations. And until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.